Breaking overseas in just a few hours, Israel says about 20 prisoners still believed to be alive could be released by Hamas. At the same time, U.S. and Israeli officials admit recovering the bodies of those killed will be very difficult. Israel is also expected to free 250 Palestinian detainees, another 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who have been detained since October 7th. They're also set to be released as well. This comes as President Trump is on his way to Israel tonight, where he is now declaring that war is over between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, Palestinians are slowly returning to homes and communities that have been reduced to rubble. There's also the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza to contend with. Officials say the ceasefire deal should increase quantities of desperately needed food, medicine, and other supplies as early as today. This is what Trump said a short time ago on Air Force One when asked about reconstruction in Gaza. Take a listen.
I don't know about the Riviera for a while, because you take a look at what you have. You have to get people taken care of first. But it's going to start really essentially immediately. I mean, they're going to have to start by removing a lot of the structures that you see that are down to the ground. I mean, it's blasted. This is like a demolition site.
Back with us is Rick Stengel, MSNBC political analyst. Also joining the conversation is David Rohde, national security editor at NBC News, who was held hostage by the Taliban back in 2008. David, it's good to have you with us. I want you just to kind of reflect on in a personal capacity here for a moment, because as we are about to see these Israeli hostages returned to Israel, we're going to see the release of close to 2,000 Palestinian detainees. What is that process like for these people as they reintegrate with their families, with their loved ones, with their communities on both sides, some being returned to war-torn places like Gaza or perhaps even the West Bank or elsewhere? Israeli hostages returning to a country that has very much changed over the last 2 years.
It will be sheer, unmitigated joy. These first few hours, these first few days, the hostages themselves, the prisoners, the Palestinians, as well as the Israeli hostages have just been waiting, trying to survive to get to this moment. The families carry this enormous burden of constantly thinking, are they doing enough to get my loved one out? You know, why aren't we pushing more? Why is this dragging on for so long? So it's just amazing, because people sort of asked me, was it difficult when you came home? And the answer was no. It was fantastic.
Of course.
They'll struggle. This will be part of their lives, a chapter of their lives, but it's just a joyous and a wonderful thing for the hostages, these Palestinian detainees, and the families on both sides of the conflict.
Rick, where are you in terms of optimism right now? We hear a lot from people about their hope for a lasting peace. That phrase repeated over and over again the last several days. But even some of the recent comments, for example, from Jared Kushner, he, in his remarks, said, you know, instead of replicating the barbarism of the enemy, that seemed to be in reference to Hamas, to perhaps Palestinians more broadly, it wasn't clear, you chose to be exceptional. And some people have reacted to those remarks, feeling that they are not necessarily the words that someone representing this administration would use if they were moving toward a plan that respected the rights and dignity of Palestinians as well. Do you believe this administration has a real plan for the Palestinian people's future? And do you believe we're really on the cusp of peace, real peace?
Well, first, I just want to commend, like everybody has, the president for actually using influence to bring about a ceasefire. But of course, it's not a peace, it's a ceasefire. This next step, the first step, is by far the easiest step in this whole process. The rest, to use the journalistic cliche, is the hard part. And so I was heartened to hear him say that aid should immediately flow in to Gaza. I mean, people are starving there. It has been a demolition site. But you know, they've been at war for a century. And this is going to change something temporarily. I hope there can be a lasting peace. But of course, a lasting peace has always depended on both sides agreeing to a two-state solution. And there is some language in that 20-point plan that the administration put together about moving toward that. I'm heartened by that. But you know, what's going to happen is the further along they get, the positions that have been hardened for decades will start to come to the fore. And, you know, let's hope that the U.S. can still use its influence to bring about a compromise.
Yeah, on that note, David, thinking about the United States' influence, right, thinking about this idea of lasting peace, are you concerned at all about the United States' involvement in the area, right? thinking about Iraq, Afghanistan, thinking about already what we've done in the Middle East, how are you thinking about our influence in the region?
You're right to ask that question. U.S. troops going into that region and trying to solve things has not worked well. I think there is, even among the hostage families, the families of the Israeli hostages, there is a gratitude towards President Trump, who uses American power and influence very aggressively. Some would argue too aggressively, but he did that. He pressured Netanyahu in particular. Many people criticized Joe Biden for not doing that before. And then the strike on Qatar, which was sort of a mistake, I think gave Trump an opportunity to sort of rally Arab nations to really pressure Hamas and just to think of the civilians in Gaza who've suffered so much. So I agree with Rick, though. The challenge here is, what is the long-term solution? A step forward was this meeting at the UN where Trump said, apparently to Arab leaders, that it was a red line, that the Israeli right could not annex the West Bank. And then the administration dropped away from some. There were some reports they were going to try to send Gazans to Libya and move them out of Gaza. Those two ideas, which were just toxic and unrealistic and just absolute red lines for Arab countries in the region, seem to, those have dropped away, those two ideas. But where this goes next and what the long-term answer is still isn't clear.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, it would be great if President Trump used that American power that he uses aggressively with the Sunni countries, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Qatar, to help fund a kind of rebuilding of Gaza, because it has to be done over from scratch. And traditionally, in the narrative of the Palestinians of never missing an opportunity to miss an opportunity, part of that was the problem was that these other states, the Gulf states, didn't support the Palestinian cause the way they probably should have. And if Trump can pressure them to step up now with, hundreds of billions of dollars, that would be a good thing.
I have to say, though, they've done that in the past. They fundraise. I mean, they do back and fund the Palestinian Authority. They were delivering hundreds of millions of dollars to Gaza. The European Union has built water treatment plants. They have built so many infrastructure projects only for Israel to have destroyed it in the previous wars. So why would anyone believe that this time around contributing and helping the Palestinian people would actually bring about a change if Israel just goes in with complete impunity and destroys it war after war after war, and is becoming more extreme, more right-wing, more fanatical, more settlements in the West Bank, and they're now openly calling for the complete annexation of Israel? I mean, I understand your point. A lot of people talk about the need to change Palestinian leadership, but Israeli society, Israeli government has shifted to the extreme right over the last 20 years. You know this better than most. The government has become more extreme. They're openly talking about annexation, and they want to resettle Gaza, and they're openly talking about ethnic cleansing. I don't know what the money is going to do if the right-wing government in Israel is not going to change, and there's no American international pressure to change that leadership.
Yes, and my presumption was that if Israel does shift after this,
and again,
that's
a big presumption in this area.
That's a very big if.
Yeah.
But in a way, I mean, what would the fantasy be? It was sort of like,
change the complete leadership and start from scratch.
Well, and that's sort of like if you compare Netanyahu to Churchill. They turned Churchill out after World War II. The Israeli voters could turn Netanyahu out. They could appeal to a more kind of liberal, progressive person. I mean, it wouldn't be a two-state solution immediately, but I think if you use the momentum from the Abraham Accords and try to figure out a new through line, that would be the very, very, very optimistic way of looking at it.